Well, as President Trump continues his trip abroad, White House officials are pushing back against new revelations surrounding James Comey's firing. The New York Times reports the president bragged about his decision during a meeting with Russian diplomats.
And according to a transcript leaked to the paper, President Trump called the former FBI director a real nut job, whose firing relieved pressure on him. Here's how National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster responded in an interview yesterday.
Well, I don't remember exactly what the president said, and the notes that they apparently have, I do not think are a direct transcript. But the gist of the conversation was that the president feels as if he's hamstrung in his ability to work with Russia to find areas of cooperation, because this has been obviously so much in the news. And that was the intention of that portion of the conversation.
Well, let's bring in Eliza Collins. She's a congressional reporter for USA Today, and she joins us now from Washington. So, Eliza, that didn't exactly sound like a denial from General McMaster. Talk about what sort of reaction that bombshell New York Times report has gotten on Capitol Hill since it broke on Friday.
It didn't sound like a denial, and that's kind of been with a lot of these reports last week coming out of the White House. There are kind of these non-denial denials, or there are denials, and then you hear the president actually go and confirm them. So this happened over the weekend. Most lawmakers were home. They are not being asked about it. They are not going to come out and say anything, at least the Republicans. We saw Jason Chaffetz, who is the oversight chair, a Republican, on TV this weekend. He said, I really hope that's not true. That's pretty much the extent of what you're hearing right now. But this is sort of part of a larger thing with Republicans in Congress. They're just exhausted. They can't keep up with these things that keep coming out. And they just keep kind of saying, well, I hope that's not true. It's an anonymous source, or, you know, yeah, the White House said that was an exact transcript. They can't remember. They're pointing to anything they can to not confirm it. But I think a lot of them do know that this is something that President Trump could go and confirm on Twitter an hour later. So they're kind of watching what they say.
So, Eliza, you brought up Jason Chaffetz, House Oversight Chairman. He says that he's going to speak privately with James Comey today. What are we expecting those discussions to reveal?
Well, this will likely be the first conversation between someone who is investigating Trump's ties to Russia, the Russian election, anything like that, with Comey since the firing, or at least publicly. So there are a lot of questions. There's apparently a memo that James Comey wrote after a meeting with Trump, where Trump asked him to go easy on Mike Flynn. So you can expect questions about that. You can expect questions about another meeting where apparently Trump asked James Comey for his loyalty, and then just overall questions that kind of led to his firing. What happened? There's so many questions, and Chaffetz is quick to point out that no one's actually seen these memos. Even the reports were based on them being read over the phone. So I think he's really going to be looking for any answers he can get. We have no idea what he's going to share publicly, though.
Eliza, one of the things that's been fascinating as it plays out is there are two narratives here, right? One, President Obama had a very antagonistic relationship with the press. That may be news to a lot of people, but he was very aggressive in pursuing people who leaked to reporters. You also have, at this point in time, lawmakers saying that they are very concerned about leakers. But does it appear to you that the concern over those folks who are talking to reporters is greater than, for example, the fact that the president declassified information, which is his right to do, with Russians, or that he may have fired Jim Comey because of the investigation into Russian meddling in the election?
I think it really depends who you're talking about. People who are closely aligned with the president himself, the White House, they're focused on these leaks. And, you know, especially if it is classified information, like when we heard that he talked to the Russians in the Oval Office and shared classified information, we actually saw the White House and administration officials go out and ask the press not to share as many details because people's lives were at stake. So there is a real genuine concern about what is being shared. Now, on the other side of it, you know, Republicans who are close to Trump, aligned with him, they're going to focus on that to try to steer the conversation away from what's actually in these leaks. And of course, Democrats are going to avoid the leaks altogether because that's not what they want to talk about. So it really just depends on kind of where you stand in this line.
So the president is on tour, his first foreign visit as a president, and he made a pretty big speech in Saudi Arabia. How are lawmakers responding to that speech?
I think there's a sense of relief. President Trump made it very clear during the campaign that he was going to be hard on what he called, radical Islamic terrorism. He had this ban, this refugee ban that's of course being litigated right now. But during the campaign, he actually called for a ban on Muslims from entering the United States. So this speech was fairly moderate. It was pretty even-keeled down the middle. His word choice was different. So I think a lot of lawmakers are sort of saying, look at that. He was being presidential. He was not being antagonistic. And there's just sort of, this is his first trip abroad. There's a lot of unexpected, especially with what's going on at home. So I think you're just seeing a lot of relief.
And Eliza, even though the president is overseas, the White House is preparing to send Congress a budget tomorrow. What do we know about it right now, and what sort of criticism or praise is it likely to face?
Well, this budget's really interesting because his budget director is Mick Mulvaney, who is conservative. He used to be a member of the Freedom Caucus, and they are really, cut as much as you can. Let's cut government spending waste, more so than even just sort of the mainstream Republican. So we're hearing that there's going to be massive domestic cuts, and that's sort of the Mulvaney influence. But at the same time, we're hearing the Ivanka Trump influence, which is a little bit more of a liberal left side. Something like paid family leave apparently is going to be a focus. So I think it's going to be interesting how lawmakers kind of fall out on this, because a conservative lawmaker might like these domestic cuts, but might not want to invest in paid family leave, and Democrats who might generally like something like paid family leave are not going to support these big cuts. So we really have to see, but it's important to note that this is just, the president's budget is just sort of a blueprint, like it's a messaging thing. It really depends what Congress and where they're the ones who decide how money gets spent.
Just out of curiosity, Eliza, I know like the last budget document we received was sort of lean. It was more like a blueprint. Do we know if this one's going to have more details?
This one is supposed to be more detailed, and it's actually supposed to be even more sort of extreme on those cuts. So we saw that, it was called the skinny budget. We saw that, and that sort of outlined broadly, like there'll be these massive cuts. Now we're actually going to see more detail about what these cuts will be. So it's kind of a jump off of that skinny budget.
All right, Eliza Collins, thank you so much.
Thank you.